get started. Thank you all for coming out this evening. It's kind of cold and blustery out there. Thanks for coming out this evening. It's a little cold and blustery out there, but hopefully you'll enjoy the evening here. Hopefully you've enjoyed the shows thus far. Tonight we have Camille Rose Garcia with us, and first of all, I'd like to thank her for making the pilgrimage down from up in Northern California in the rain, so we should applaud her for that. We also want to thank the Harold J. Miossi grant for making this possible. Without that grant, we couldn't bring these artists from outside the San Luis Obispo to our gallery and give you the opportunity to see their work firsthand instead of just seeing it in magazines and such. And so we really do appreciate that opportunity. I first saw Camille's work in 2007 at the San Jose Museum of Art when she had a retrospective of that Tragic Kingdom. And it was really a great show because it was just, again, a full-on exhibition of her work and one that was like a fun house. And I went out of there just overjoyed with the work and put in the back of my mind, if I ever got a chance to bring her to San Luis Obispo, I was going to, again, take that opportunity. And so I am happy to have her with us tonight. Camille went to school at Otis, where she got her BFA, and she got her master's degree at UC Davis. She has been exhibiting around the world, nationally and internationally. Her work is collected in the LA County Museum of Art as well as the San Jose Museum of Art. Her work has been shown on covers of Juxtapose magazine, Modern Painter, Rolling Stone magazine. So her work is out there for most of us to see in print form, but it's nice to, again, to have the opportunity to see this work, which was kind of a collaboration between the Alice in Wonderland original storyline and, again, her opportunity to, again, investigate that with her illustrations. So, without further ado, Camille Rose Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Is this all right? Well, I guess when you're done clapping. Okay, all right. Thanks for coming, you guys. It's really, really nice to be here. I don't get down this way too often, so it's been a beautiful drive full of emergency alerts, hail, thunder, no accidents, thank God. Anyway, so thanks for having me. I have just a few slides, not really slides, I don't know why I said that, digital images to show you. So the show that is up right now is an illustrated Alice in Wonderland. I did a book for HarperCollins a few years ago. So I'm going to show you kind of the process of how I did that. But just a little bit first about me. I grew up in Los Angeles. I am the daughter of two artists. My mom is a mural painter and a sign painter, and my father, who's passed away now, he taught film. He was a filmmaker. So I grew up in an environment that was very kind of creative and bohemian and full of music, and I really think that kind of informed me as a young artist and made me feel like that was, you know, those were professions that were real, that could earn kind of a living. So I've been lucky so far in that I'm still doing that. So this project I did 2008 for HarperCollins. They kind of called me up and said they wanted me to illustrate Alice in Wonderland, and at first I said no because it seemed like we're so familiar with that, you know, the iconic Tenniel illustrations, that it would be hard to kind of top that, you know. But then what I did was I kind of revisited his illustrations and did it almost as an homage to his compositions and his sort of stylistic take on it, but then kind of imposing my own, I don't know, whatever style I do, a little bit Gothic, I guess. But this was the first time I did watercolor, so that lent sort of a lighter air to everything. I like the idea of using these sort of really keyed up pastel colors that kind of touch on the sort of psychedelic nature of the story. So these are all, well, yeah, you've seen these the size you already know. I start out with doing a lot of pre-sketches. These ones are on vellum, which is kind of like a tracing paper, and then I do all the sketches and then transfer them over to the watercolor paper, and from there do all the color work. But for commercial work, which this is because it's for a big company, I usually have to, I did like, I think 45 or 50 of the sketches freehand, and then I have to basically send them to HarperCollins, and they approve them, and then from that point, I do all the color work. But the point between when they're approved and when everything is due for this project was about 6 weeks. I know. Why do I say yes to these things? I don't know. So when I'm doing the sketches, for some reason I have longer for those. I'm like, oh, okay, this is easy. The sketches are all done. This is going to be a piece of cake. But usually by the end, it's like 2 weeks of working till 4 a.m. in the studio really late. I have to have like really loud rock and roll music on to get through it. So some of them by the end get a little bit crazy. It's just the nature of it. So don't look too close. Maybe like that one. But this was really, really fun to do. I do some commercial illustration. I also do a lot of gallery work that's just my own work. That a lot of it's really based on kind of fairy tale and layered symbolism from children's books and folk tales and music and all kinds of things. Okay, I have a lot of. Okay, this. Does anyone? How many people here are artists that work in the profession? Okay, so this is a fun little nightmare. I just wanted to kind of talk you through. So the editor, they always say, okay, yeah, you get to draw your own cover, or whatever you come up with. I'm like, cool. So they let me do like a couple sketches, and then they want like 40 thumbnail sketches of their ideas. And then at the end, there's always like the one idea that she had originally, that's the one they go with, and this was it. So it was like after all my different ideas, and then therefore, it was like, well, I could have just done the one. So the process is, I don't know, it turned out really cool, but yeah, it's just the process whenever I'm in it, I'm like, why do I even do this? This is crazy. But yeah, I always like the end result. Okay. This is a show I just finished that opened in Seattle actually last weekend. And this show was really inspired by the films of Alejandro Jodorowsky and this idea of sort of taking a language of symbols and layering them. So how I did this one is I made all these sort of little cards of my own personal symbols, reoccurring symbols that I use in my work. And I would pick sort of randomly like 3 or 4 and then combine those into a painting. So during this time, I'm a huge music fan. I listen to David Bowie all the time, and he passed away during the making of the show. And one of the symbols I had was for Orpheus, which was the Greek god of. He makes this beautiful music, and all the animals, everyone's attracted to the music he makes. He's sort of a muse. So I didn't have anything drawn for that yet, so I decided to use David Bowie as the Orpheus character in these. And I like the idea of sort of doing these psychedelic nature paintings. Can you guys hear me okay? Is this all coming across? All right, cool. So these have a lot of like plants and insects and different things. This is the biggest one. This one is 6 feet by 8 feet. And this one is called House of Psyche, and sort of playing with the symbol of Psyche, who goes on this crazy sort of journey. I don't know, it's a long story. I won't go into all of that. But what I like kind of touching upon sort of ancient Greek stories is they all reoccur in our modern day fairy tales. So the story of Psyche, some of that story recurs in Cinderella. Anyway, so I started playing also with these kind of like mirror image, using the same thing on both sides. I like how it kind of abstracts the space a little bit. Okay. So these are all from that show. Am I going to have to go faster? Okay. Is Robbie Cannell in the audience here? Where is he? Did he? Okay, so these, you'll like this because we were talking about teeth. These are my teeth demons. And
I know them well.
yes, as do I. So the tooth I use as a recurring symbol, almost the way you would use a skull. It's sort of a symbol of decay and death. And this whole show is about kind of death and regeneration and sort of beauty and decay, all those things overlapping. So I did a series of these teeth that had these kind of like, each one has a little demon in it. So this is the big bad wolf, Nosferatu. And then some, I guess that's, okay. Anyway, enough of that story. But anyway, tooth demons, blah, blah, blah. So this is just, I have a lot of studio shots. This is kind of, this is a cool show. This was from 2014. I work on all the paintings at once, usually when I do a show, so I'll have like 14 or 20 paintings all kind of thrown around, and usually I'll work on one and then look over and they all kind of inform each other. So to me, it's almost like composing an album all at once or something. I really hate to work on one thing at a time. Just some studio shots. This is, I work in acrylic, usually on wood panel, sometimes on paper. So there's always wine and rock and roll. Oh, there's a soda. Okay. So this was from a show I did called La Danse Macabre, which is the dance of death. And I like the idea of, again, this sort of beautiful balance of kind of grabbing life, you know, sort of that, like a lust for life, and that because it's so fleeting. So a lot of these have, this one has a beetle in it, but some of these have moths, which are, you know, a symbol of like that kind of fleeting nature of everything. So I showed this one because the earlier version of this painting, instead of a tooth, it had a skull, and I think there's another version where it's in there. But I was really kind of like, oh, I'm sick of doing skulls, you know, what could I use instead? And that's when I started doing the tooth. Yeah, this is from that same show. And these are a lot of, I show a lot of process, you know, I take a lot of pictures of the process also. So these are like sort of halfway. That's a moth playing an organ. What's this one called? Ugh. Ghost Moth Serenade, that's right. Okay. How much time? Oh, here's the earlier version with the skull, and that's when I changed it to the tooth. How much time do I have? We're good? Okay, cool. So, yeah, and she's sort of dancing with this like fancy man, you know. Oh, yeah, these were inspired by all these great paintings of these sort of women dancing with these skeletons or dancing with death. So I wanted to kind of do that painting. So that's my version of it. Okay, so here's them in process. Just detail shots. This one, Robbie again. This one is called The Constant Haunting of My Teeth. And there's like, again, a little like tooth creep, sort of like always reminding me that I'm falling apart. Bats. I was born in Los Angeles, and I moved up to Northern California in about 2007 in the woods. And so kind of really immersed in nature. And once I moved up there, the paintings got a lot more vibrant, psychedelic, and a lot of the insects and nature started kind of creeping in. And at first I was like, oh no, I'm losing my edge. But I like the idea of kind of embracing some of that beauty instead of, I used to kind of do more social political work about, you know, nature and culture and the sort of weird balance between those things. And so, yeah, I was like suspicious of myself, but then I thought, you know, I like the idea also of embracing that beauty and celebrating it in that way. Instead of always kind of pointing out everything that's ugly, it's like, okay, this is just the other side of that, you know. This is, I coat the paintings when they're done with like a shellac varnish, so this is, they have to lay flat, so that's what that is. Okay, let's see, this one. Oh, that's the painting finished. No, it's finished. Okay. Yeah, so here's, I love, I mean, I love tons of color, but I also love working just ink on paper. I love doing the line work. There's something really, really meditative about just using a brush and ink. It's one of my favorite things. So I think the next series is just a bunch of drawings, and then some of the tools I use to do that. So I usually use a brush and ink, or I use, oh wait, more of them. Let's go back. And I also use a dip pen in ink, which is like kind of an old-timey pen that you just dip in the ink. And I collect them. I have a lot of sort of antique ones that I use. Okay, more paintings. These ones are a little bit older. This might have been, this was like right after I moved up to the woods, so things were starting to get more vibrant. That was a little crazy. Let's see. Okay. If I'm going too fast, let me know. I know I have like 50 more. And if anyone wants to interrupt me at any time and ask a question about any of these, feel free. Let's see. So, this one, this was a show I did. It was called Snow White and the Black Lagoon. Oh, is that a hand?
Yeah.
All right. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, when I do the paintings of the teeth, do I have dreams of my teeth falling out? Yes, constantly, always. But then my teeth actually do fall out as well. So that's real. I actually had, I wrote this story that's going to be coming out next year. It's called The Cabinet of Dr. Decay, and it was kind of a weird psychedelic story about this process of my teeth falling apart. But I had to have 11 root canals in 1 week, and then at the end, gum surgery. And they gave me, for the gum surgery, I'm terrified to go under, so they said, well, you can do the gum surgery when you're awake, but we just give you like an anti-anxiety pill. So I had like an atypical reaction to the anti-anxiety pill, where it gave me complete anxiety and like suicidal thoughts and amnesia, just weird, like completely nuts. So yeah, and that was like on a Friday, and it took me a couple days to recover. And then they were like, okay, well, you're going to come in Monday and have it done, right? I was like, okay. So yeah, I've had a lot. To me, it's my symbolic reminder of that I'm just a temporary vessel on this earth. I don't totally understand why teeth fall apart, but like our eyes are fine for like 100 years. I don't get that, but anyway. So it's my. What's that?
Good for your art.
It's great for my art. So I am thankful, very thankful for the teeth. Okay, so this painting, this shows, Snow White and the Black Lagoon. Another question, cool.
What drew you to acrylic, using acrylic?
Actually, the question is what drew me to using acrylic. In art school, I actually was mainly using oil paint, but I don't know if they still do, but back then it was like turpentine everywhere, and I just developed a really bad allergic reaction to it. And also I'm super impatient, and usually for commercial illustration work, everything has to be done yesterday, so it became really a speed thing, and I was just more comfortable with the cleanup. I've thought about now going back to it, because now there's all kinds of great, just like natural oil, orange oil, and just really like things that don't make you nauseous.
And then is watercolor not, can't do some things with that you can with acrylic?
The watercolor I mainly use for the commercial illustration projects, and that's, again, more of a practical thing, because size-wise, I have to do so many, and then I have to have them scanned. So it'd be really expensive, and it would take so much longer if I did them bigger. So the watercolor I can do smaller because the pen work I can do a lot smaller. Where for some reason the on panel it's bigger. It's a bigger kind of gesture, I guess, gesturally. Yeah. So it's mainly a practical kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So this show was. I was making it right when there's the Gulf oil spill and all the animals were being affected by the oil and the pelicans, and all those images were sort of on the news a lot. So I kind of like this idea of combining the fairy tale of Snow White with this sort of social political kind of message of like her kind of wandering through the lagoons and the forests and kind of being a savior of animals in a way. So this painting, all these works were from that show. I like the idea too of using in Snow White the witch figure as this sort of symbolic of like greed and corruption, that kind of thing. So and vanity. So that's what that painting was started as. These are in process again, but this is another painting, Snow White in the Black Lagoon. And so there were these three white crocodiles, and they're not there yet, but in the final one they are, but they're all handing her their eggs to sort of take care of them in the future. Oh yeah, there it is. So I like the idea of kind of touching on some familiar stories that people know. So, Snow White or certain fairy tales or reoccurring symbols. I feel like there's archetypes that we all relate to just instinctually, and I think it kind of helps tell a story in a way because it's like a point of entry that we all understand. Oh yeah, this one, same show. I don't know if I have the final one of that. I forget exactly why I wanted to do an albino peacock, but for some reason it made sense at the time. I don't know why. Okay, there's that painting finished. So, yeah, it's weird because some paintings I'll make and at the end I'll really, oh, whoa, okay, turn out pretty cool. And then I'll never be able to reproduce like the colors or the way I made it, or it's just the weirdest thing, and that's where I know it's not really always up to me. It just sort of comes through me, I guess. Yeah, Krista. Yeah, I do specifically work in a way where everything is kind of vertically falling. So when I do the brush strokes, I'll do that intentionally of just like pulling everything kind of down. Is that what you mean? You mean the texture?
Yeah, the texture.
Like the wood grain?
Oh, okay. Wood grain.
Yeah, but I do it, intentionally in one direction, yeah. There's some kind of consistency that feels really natural and good about things falling, and it's like gravity, everything's sort of like how moss hangs or rain. I don't know, there's something to that, and I always work in that way with even like how I do the shading and all the drips and everything. Yes?
Yeah, so you're working on panel?
Wood panel, yeah.
And so you know gesso?
Yes, I do.
You do. So the wood grain?
That's a secret. It's a trade secret. I'm not allowed to tell you. But it's not, I don't work on plywood. People think that sometimes, but no. I can't tell you how I do it. Oh yeah, this also, you guys know the artist Mark Ryden? Oh yeah, so he bought this painting. So that hangs in his TV room. But yeah, this was one from that show as well. Oh God. So, pelicans, oil, I was like, well, I got to do a pelican if I'm talking about this Gulf oil spill, but Pelicans are so completely awkward to draw. I did the eye, I think, about 50 times. I had it big, I had a little, and so finally at the end, I was like, oh, whatever, no one's going to buy that weird-looking painting. And then, my friend Mark bought it, so I was like, oh, cool. And I'm more forgiving of it now that I see it often, but some paintings right after they're done, I just hate them. It's such a weird, I don't know. These are two paintings. I don't know if you guys have my newest book called Mirror, Black Mirror, but this is the front and the back cover. The one on the left, these are in process. The one on the left is called Hello Orpheus, and then the one on the right is The Ghost of G sharp 7. And they were both inspired by music, and a certain musician in particular that I just kind of like that idea of embracing that temporality of music, that it's such a moment in time, and you're always kind of trying to hold on to it and capture it. And actually most poignant moments are like that. So I like the idea of almost trying to capture that idea in a painting about capturing an idea. So these are both about that. System in process. So there's these ghost hands that are both, these ones are doing a guitar. They're playing a guitar that's not there, but that's a guitar chord. And then the other one, they're playing a piano. So I like this idea of trying to conjure back out that feeling. So they're both kind of in these beautiful caves, having a solitary moment, and then sort of trying to conjure back that memory. They're there, finished. Oh, here's some of the tools I use. I use sable brushes for all the ink work, and then that's a dip pen, and it's actually in an oblique. It's called an oblique pen nib holder. I'm left-handed, so it makes it really hard to sometimes to do the pen work any other way. But once I found that, it helped a lot. I actually can't even do cursive lettering. It's literally impossible as a left-hander unless you do it upside down. So if I wanted to write a love letter to someone in cursive in pen, I'd have to write it upside down. I collect vintage inkwells and things. I really like when I'm doing watercolor ink work. I like to put all the paint in really beautiful glass holders, and mainly because I'm a little bit clumsy, so anything plastic I would always sort of knock over. So I started collecting salt cellars and things like that from antique stores. They'd be $1. I mean, they're not expensive, but I kind of liked how it would make it more important when I would set up. It's sort of almost a little weird ritual. So here's just another work. Oh, here's all the stuff on paper with the pen work.
What kind of paper is that?
That paper that's my favorite paper, that is called Twin Rocker watercolor paper, and it's handmade somewhere back east, and now I can't get that paper anymore. I don't know if they're out of business or what, but I thought, should I make my own handmade paper? But I don't think there's time in our modern world for that kind of insanity. Because, I'll have those thoughts, how do you make Indian ink? Should I do that? But no, shouldn't. Oh, I don't know if this will play. Let me see if I can play this. I have some videos. Oh, maybe that's not it. Okay. Oh God, sorry if anyone's vegan or vegetarian, but this is my favorite inkwell. It's made out of a hoof. But it was a trophy, an English hunting trophy, and I just was I don't know, I like that idea of just I'm setting up for work and just, where's my hoof? Sort of weird. Okay, so this is, I did another book. After the Alice in Wonderland book with HarperCollins, it was I'm never doing that again. That was crazy. And then do you want to do Cinderella? And I thought, no, I don't want to do Cinderella. It's a nightmare. And then I did Cinderella. So this is the whole process of doing that. And again, it was okay, it was the sketches, all 50 of them, and then 6 weeks to do the color. So these are, and the cool thing, this one, I was because I'm never going to work with them again, I can do whatever I want. So I was I can sneak all kinds of stuff in there. So I made Cinderella with black and purple hair, And I turned the whole project in so late they couldn't really change like some of the things I did. So that, I was like, I finally figured it out. No, I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah, because nowhere in the book it says she has blonde hair. So it's like, okay, well, all right, let's work with that. It's really fun to do the prints. I have a hard time drawing men in general and like princes. It's just like, I don't know what they're supposed to look like. So this one was, I was looking at some pictures of King Ludwig, who owns a castle in Germany. I was like, that's I like his hair. So, but I like the idea that the ball, it was this masquerade ball, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to give him a wool peg. So I kind of, when I first thought of it, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make it different than like Disney Cinderella. It just seems so. But then I just started doing all this crazy stuff, and it became really fun. This is like a really, really rough sketch, so like a thumbnail. So I'll do those about like 2 inches by 3 inches just to kind of get the composition down. But I like to show those because, everything doesn't start out, looking complete. So these are the Ugly Sisters, and that one is based on Betty Davis. I like the idea of it, like whatever happened to Baby Jane, like Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, just like these ugly sisters that were, so that's kind of interesting. So here's like the pile, literally, it's just a pile on the table of drawings. It's like, oh, great, now I get to scan them all in and send them to New York. So I don't send originals, I just send them, they just basically say yes or no, but yeah. This was the clock, which I thought would be kind of a cool character in and of itself, because that idea of time, midnight, running out of time, that whole thing was sort of like, became something I started to fixate on a little bit, that the clock and time and midnight became symbolic of a certain kind of death, like that's the end, that's when it's all up. So it had sort of a sinister kind of double meaning in a way. So there's the skull popping out, and then it's at the prince's house, so it's got to have this little like wolf thing up there. But that was kind of fun to do. So here's again a pile of. These are the spot illustrations. So in illustration, you have like the 2-page spread, and then the opener, and then these are just like supposed to be little teeny ones. But I don't know, everything just always takes forever. With her pumpkin. Okay. He was fun. Let's see. Okay, working on them. I think I'm going to get to. I have some videos in here somewhere. So that's like a big 2-page spread. There's the mother. Yeah, it was cool because again, like I turned this in so late, so they didn't say anything about like how weird or ugly I was making everything. So I was like, yes, cool. We just piles. This is like, it starts to get like, okay, there's 4 days left and it's late. And, these 2-page spreads, sometimes the figures, like these ones would be about 2 inches tall. And I'm not super great at drawing figures under a certain size. So, they just get weird looking at some point. So I was like, well, that's okay because they're supposed to be really ugly. Oh yeah, I got to sneak this in there too. So this was the wedding scene at the end, which they're like, I want a big wedding scene with like 100 guests. This is my editor. That's not her voice, but I'm like, I'm not going to paint 100 guests, at the end of the thing. So I was like, all right, I'll throw in like a rat guest and a mouse guest, But because it was just the sketch, I just could Photoshop that out when I sent them the sketch. But in the real sketch, I was like, I'm leaving that. So, I have to rebel a little bit because, it's just, I don't know, have fun with it. That's Cinderella doing her sister's hair. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, that's I use the sable brushes, and they're really nice and really pointy, and that one's called a rigger, so it's like longer than a pointed round for anyone who cares about that kind of thing. Yeah, so this is so how the process with these then is once I have the drawing approved, I ink everything. I do all the black line work first, which I don't, I kind of just stumbled upon watercolor. It wasn't something I learned traditionally, so I don't know how other people do it, but I can, because the black is waterproof, I can lay all the colors on top of that. So for me, it's a way of just like getting all in there, keeping the lines, and seeing where all the black goes, and then I do the color on top. Oh yeah, so here's then I have piles. Wait, where'd it go? Then I have piles of, all the ink work stuff. So at the end there's like, I don't know, like hundreds of things. So yeah, this is, and sometimes I really like the work just with the line work, but, it's gotta be colored. It's printed in color, it's gotta be colored. So this is, just all the ink work. Here's the kind of half done. You can see all the pencil. Oh, this is the color scheme that I was really liking for this was basically like a box of Good and Plenty and then black licorice. So I like the whole, like those pastels with the black. I really like that. So I just copied those colors, basically.
Doesn't have anything to do with the root canal.
I hate candy. Hate it. Candy is evil. Oh yeah, so here's kind of laying in. So then I'll lay in, like the first layer of watercolor, and then, start layering those colors. Yeah, I really like watercolor because it's very fast. I'll do little like testers and stuff. So I can basically like lay out, 5 of these and go through and just like lay in washes of color all at once. And that's how I'm able to do them in 6 weeks. Piles.
Finding the bad guys take over.
Oh, those are my favorite. Yeah, I love doing a villain. Yeah, it's actually, the hardest for me is to do a prince, and then the second hardest is a princess. But the villains, all day long. I kind of wish there was a fairy tale that was all villains. That would be my dream. But, I try to squeeze in as many evil-looking characters as possible. Okay, so these are, getting a little more layered. And, oh yeah, that was, the wedding scene at the end. There's a tree, I have to give it a face. Or anything, a cauldron, it's got to have a face. And then, this, I remember exactly, the Grand Budapest Hotel just come out, Wes Anderson, and I love his color scheme so much. So this was like, this one has to be all pink and red. Okay, so yeah, color. I don't know. What else can I say? Okay, I'll wrap it up. Oh yeah, there's the candy. I actually did end up eating all the candy because it was there. It was good.
Is this before or after the tooth problem?
Oh, the tooth problems are ongoing. So those are just a constant haunting of my teeth. This was, the pumpkin coach was super fun. That was, where I hopefully have a bigger one of that. But this was the wedding scene where, again, it was like, they're all like 3 inches tall, and I think that's what it is. It's a certain comfort of like doing the line work, and once it's too teeny, then it just, it becomes almost impossible. So don't look too close at that one. Piles, things. So there's the coach. Yeah, again, I was kind of doing this like, Oh, that's what it was. Like I was trying to do all the Good and Plenty colors, and then Grand Budapest came out, and I was like, "There's got to be red." So the whole second half of that book, there's like red with all the pink. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, is it Cauldron with a face? Yeah, see that like that frog is about, that's like smaller than a pinky nail. So it's like, you know, his eyes are gonna, I don't know. I mean, I don't really wear glasses yet, but I probably need to start because I can only do a certain size really. So here's them all, yeah, pretty much finished. And then, yeah, process from there is like, yeah, I scan them all in and then just send them to the publisher. And then vow never to do, oh yeah, so this, I want to show you guys this one because I think I had 3 days left, you know, before they were due. And I was like, I had 11 that weren't done. So that was, those were staying up till like 4 a.m. Okay. Let's see. Yeah.
When you're scanning them in, do you ever find that your color then shifts and you have to go back and color correct to what the originals are? Or you
I don't worry about that.
Really?
Don't worry, because they don't see the originals, so, and, you know, I literally, and I've worked for many years in graphic design and magazines where, you know, it's like color correction, but at a certain point, you know, the person on the end of, you know, the receiver of the book, or they don't know what the original looks like. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. So I don't care. Who cares? What? No, because even if I do like super color correct everything and get it perfect to the original, by the time it goes through their hands and through China, it's like, even actually if you look at the book, The Alice in Wonderland, they bump up the contrast, they bump up the saturation, they change it completely. Super technical, but yeah, in China they do like a batch thing once they have all your images to print books, so they batch process everything. So nothing ever looks the way you really want it to, so that's why I don't care. Because, yeah, I don't care. Yeah. I care if I'm making prints of my own work for sale, then I care because I can control that. But if I can't control that, then I don't care. Yeah. Oh, these might be some of the same. I thought I had some videos, but I don't know. They might not be playing. Oh, yeah, 'cause I think that might be the last one. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, cool. Well, thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah, questions, more questions now would be great. Okay, let's, a blue plaid shirt, yes?
Can you say something about pipes and mushrooms that aren't too terribly obvious? They appear a lot in the
Yeah, they do, yeah. Okay, so the question is, can I talk about the pipes and the mushrooms that appear a lot in the work? I do, on occasion, like to alter my reality a little bit, which I mainly do with music. That's all I'm going to say, mainly. I'm trying to remember where the pipe thing started. I think, you know, I like the idea of portals in fairy tales. You know, Narnia, you have the wardrobe, and, you know, I don't know, just you always have like, you're going through a portal and then you come into a different world. So I like the idea of the pipe being this portal that things were coming out of, almost like a genie lamp. So it became like, okay, once you, and I guess personally it's like when I go into the studio, that's a portal, and I set up a situation where I can kind of alter my reality a little bit, because I don't really like the reality we've created in modern Western day culture. I think we've left a lot out of human experience. We've forgotten a lot that are part of probably naturally how we're supposed to be, which is more creative, more intuitive. You know, there's really no place for it in our like general workday, so I try to, as much as I can, create a different reality when I walk into the studio. So the pipe, the mushrooms, yeah, it's maybe a little subversive, a little bit, but just kind of like, you know what? Yeah, there's, and you know, it's. I think it's important to recognize that we need to shift our perception and shift our reality a lot. So, oh, good question.
So you said you rely a lot on fairy tale elements to bring in something familiar, but it kind of sounded also like you were using almost like an occult personal lexicon of symbols. Do you make any like conscious attempt to balance
Yeah, that's a really good question. The question is, I use a lot of symbols from fairy tales and recurring symbols, but also there's an element of like occult or archetype, or maybe even, I would say like from the tarot deck. And yeah, what I think it is there's, and this is kind of like Carl Jung stuff, is that, there are, there's a whole symbolic world of archetypes and language that is beyond, they're beyond words, and they're more, pictorial, I guess, or like hieroglyphs, and they're ancient. And I think as humans, these are things we recognize even though we don't know where they're from. And those have been repeated. They're repeating patterns within our own fairy tales, stories we tell, music, art. They're all repeating patterns. I'm very, very interested in this idea of repeating patterns, not just visually, but how they occur conceptually within our human experience. So even though it's like I'm doing it in a way that's really sort of basic, like, okay, I'm using, there's like a villain, a witch character, it's like an ancient archetype, and there's, the hero or the Orpheus or a spider. They all have multiple layers of meanings in across different cultures, and I find that fascinating. Like the spider is Maya, the weaver of the universe. That's like one read on a spider. I could go on and on, but yeah, the deeper I go into it, there are repeating patterns. When I was doing Snow White, it was like, okay, that shows up, magic mirror and dwarves, that shows up in, there's like a Mayan fairy tale that all shows up in. And I don't know, I think that's very interesting, and there's something to that connects kind of everything, our collective, subconscious, collective symbolic language. So I do try to play with that, for sure. Yeah, great question. Yeah?
You mentioned altering your reality. What kind of music do you listen to? Who do you like?
I like a lot of music, but a lot of like, it's like I'll listen to Ravi Shankar one day, and then like the Rolling Stones the next day. I like a lot of 70s rock. I like a lot of music that's happening now. I like folk music. I listen to classical. I like, Godspeed You Black Emperor. Like, it's across the board. It goes all over the place. But it depends on the mood. Like, some shows, I'll only listen to like T-Rex and Bowie and sort of like glam, there's that reality. So it's like whatever reality I want to get into, that's the music I'll put on. So the last show I did for Seattle was all like psychedelic nature paintings with repeating patterns. So that I just had like Ravi Shankar on a loop, because it's like that never begins or ends. And I kind of like those songs in a weird way. But then it's like when it's 4 a.m. and the thing is due, it's tequila and Queens of the Stone Age. Like, that's the only thing that will keep me up. So everything has a specific use, So cool. These are good questions. Yeah.
Talk about altering reality and having gravity. How would you describe the type of space that you make? Like, you have patterns and some 3D objects, so that's a 3D towards the 3D end, but then you're not super flat either as a 2D. So how do you decide where?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The question is, the reality I create isn't totally three-dimensional or two-dimensional, and I play with that on purpose. There's a lot of artists that are great at light source and that kind of European, like Western perspective, and I think that's amazing, but I think that describes only one kind of reality we're used to seeing. So I like the idea of kind of shifting, like you're not sure what kind of landscape you're in, you're not sure, when you view the work, you're not sure where you are within it. So almost a little disorienting the way a dream, when you try to remember a dream, that's kind of more the reality I'd like to try to capture. So there's some things that are abstracted, some things are unclear, some things don't make any sense pictorially. So that's why sometimes I'll have a cloud that's behind, kind of like coming in front and like going through a face, just to kind of not have like an expected, just throwing something in there that's a little bit, odd, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Max, yeah, the question is if I watch a lot of cartoons, and yeah.
And have you ever animated any of these stories or any of your own stories?
Yeah, animation was one of my first loves. Max Fleischer is a huge, huge influence as well. Yeah, the early Disney, the golden years, Bambi, Pinocchio, Snow White, beautiful, beautiful films. All the Warner Brothers, the weird, like, real. I mean, I know they were shifting their percent. I don't know what they were on back in the 40s, but something was going on because, like, those early Warner Brothers, like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, they're brilliant, brilliant, brilliant works of art. I consider them to be. So I'm working on something right now with some stop motion animators, and that will be hopefully the first thing that it's such a collaborative process and it's so expensive as just kind of a person working in my studio. I'm not able to do it, but it's such a love of mine. I feel like it just brings everything to life, and you have music, and it's like everything I love, narrative, and so, yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah. And even I love all that weird stop motion, like Schwenkmeyer and the Brothers Quay. I mean, just great, great, great histories of beautiful animation art for sure. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I'm coming from a whole different perspective here.
Okay.
I'm a woodworker and carpenter.
All right.
You stated how you don't work it on plywood as your platform, but yet you showed a particular painting that you said was 3 foot by 6 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys gluing wood together?
Oh no, it's actually birch plywood, but it's not like a construction grade plywood. Is what I meant, because some people think I use that and I use the wood grain of like a construction grade plywood, but it's actually very smooth. There's no it's super smooth surface. It's actually a piece of wood. Yeah. I like that question though. Technical. Thank you. Are we done? Whew. No, not yet. Okay. Here.
You have one more?
Oh yeah. Sure.
When you were like a little girl, did you believe in the fairy tales? And like, did you feel tricked by them, like the whole happy ending thing?
Oh, that's a good question.
And like, if so, like, when did you realize they were lies?
So, the question is, when I was a little girl, did I believe in the fairy tales, and when did I know they were lies? I don't think I ever believed them. I believe the part I did believe. I was a real tomboy. I was never into like princess stuff or anything. I loved the villains though. I loved the underdog or like Daffy Duck or like just the villains. Like I love the oddballs. So I never ever related to the princess thing. And I don't know if it's because I grew up with a single mom and she was she worked full time, and so that never seemed like a reality of like, I'm just going to get saved if I'm pretty enough. Like, that just seemed like, I didn't know what that meant, but I knew what villains meant. Like, that was a reality to me. So, but what was the other part of that question? Yeah, so I don't think, the part that I did always, and still intrigues me, is that idea of a portal, of going into another dimension through, like Narnia, you have the wardrobe. Help me out, there's all kinds of, what's that? Yeah, Alice in Wonderland, that portal. What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of a hole in the ground. But that's kind of my favorite because that is like a direct, it's letting you know you're going into a different dimension. And to me, like surrealism, that whole thing, like that makes a lot of sense to me. So I always like that idea of like, okay, we're going into another dimension now. I understand that. But the princess thing, I never understood, and I still. I read like older fairy tales and to try to find like what, and I think it just was like, I don't know if it was just like a certain time period where women, that was like what was expected, and if you do this, then this will work out. But I don't know if that's a reality, if that ever worked out that way. It seemed like women had a really bad time of it for most of human history. So I don't know who ever believed the princess. Sorry, children. Cool. Okay. Is that it? Thank you guys so much. Those are great questions. Cool. Okay. I did. All right. That wasn't terribly painful.
That's great. Thank you all for coming. And again, we have the student show coming up next in a couple of weeks, so we hopefully we'll see you all then.
And the open house.
And the open house. You're all welcome to our houses.
Cool.
Drive safe.
All right.
Perfect.
That was cool.